Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is August the 12th, 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. We are starting one more live stream, and if you're here with us, please do me a favor. Type in the chat window if you can see me, if you can hear me. That's great. Thank you so much for confirming. I can see things are working fine now. We have Matt again. It's Matt and Adrian. Good to see you here. We have Samil. Thank you for chiming in, Samil. And Samil has a question here. Please, I wanted to ask the procedure and timeline. If I start a stable union process from scratch with timeline until I get citizenship in real estate. So Samil, timeline is gonna depend on many variables. Okay, so it's difficult for us to tell you how long this journey is gonna last for you. And I can give you a very specific example of a component that can change substantially the timeline. A major requirement for you to secure residency in Brazil through stable union is going to be your background check. So depending on your country, this document or this requirement, it could take, like a few weeks to a couple of months. Okay, so this is going to be one of these variables that is going to change the timeline substantial, and there are others, right? So that's why it's difficult to tell you like about a timeline. But for the background check in particular, for instance, for our U.S. citizen clients, this is typically going to take between a month and a half to a couple of months between beginning the process of taking the fingerprints to getting the actual physical FBI background check apostilled by the State Department of the United States, which is done in Washington, D.C. So just this requirement alone is going to take typically a month and a half to a couple of months. But, like talking in very broad general lines, the procedure for the stable union, it could easily take a couple of months for you to gather the documents that the registry is going to require for the stable union in the first place, right? And once you have the stable union, that's when you're going to need to get additional stuff for you to apply for the residency. Because of a high level of fraud in the past, stable union by itself is no longer enough for a residency application. And therefore, either in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, or other states, nowadays they are going to have the stable union just as a start point for the residency requirement. In Rio de Janeiro, we see requests for proofs of a legitimate relationship, such as joint bank accounts, life insurance covering your partner. If there is, like, for instance, a child that both partners have together, or a real estate property recorded on both names, right? Like, these are just some of the examples of the additional requirements that are going to be required. So, it may take you like a couple of months to set up a união estável. It may take you an additional couple of months to get the other evidences and the background check. So here altogether, it would be about 4 months to get you to a position of applying for the residency based on stable union. Once you have everything, then you're going to schedule an appointment, you're going to submit the documentation. This could take an additional couple of months. So now we are on month 6. And then, on month 6, month 7, if everything is okay, that's when you typically get the residency through real estate. The residency at the beginning is going to be a protocolo, is going to be a print out of your residency card number. It's not going to be the physical card, it's going to be a print out. And then a couple of months later, so now we're talking about month 8, that's when you're going to have the physical card available for pick up at the same police station in which you started the process. Okay, they are not going to mail this thing. You need to be there to go pick it up. Okay, we see very often, particularly with our main clients, which are the U.S. citizens, like they sometimes get frustrated. They say, well, but I need to go back and pick it up. Yes, you need to go back and pick this card up. If you're traveling abroad and you don't come back to pick up the card, the Polícia Federal has discretion to cancel your residency, right? So this thing, I don't know why recurrently, like, people think is just something pro forma, is not really important, but everything in the immigration journey, of course, it's important, and they are not there to adapt to your timeline. You are there to adapt to the immigration timeline, right? Like, I hope it makes sense. So month 8, you're getting the R&M card, physical card. Okay, now for the purpose of applying for the citizenship, you need to be living in Brazil for a full year, right? For a full year after the granting of the residence. The granting of the residence is typically when you get the protocolo, okay? Not when you get the card. The physical card is just a physical representation of the residency that you got through the protocolo. So you got the protocolo on a certain date, a full 365 days down the line. That's going to be your qualifying date for you to apply for the Brazilian citizenship. And you should be in the country for at least 75% of the time, and they don't care about your circumstances. Another thing that is pretty amusing to me is like how many people will schedule a consultation with us to tell us about all the reasons why they cannot stay in Brazil for a full year or 75% of the time. Listen, we understand, life happens, there are circumstances, but the Brazilian immigration could not care less about your specifics. Like, there are laws, there are processes in place, and you need to meet those requirements. So just like to emphasize that you need to be in Brazil for 75% of the time, or you don't apply and you don't get the Brazilian citizenship. Another major requirement is going to be the Portuguese language requirement. You need to be able to speak Portuguese in a functional manner, right? Like, you don't need to speak as a native, of course, but you need to be able to speak Portuguese enough to pass an interview with the Brazilian Federal Police towards the end of the 1 year that you are in Brazil. Once you start, actually not at the end of 1 year, at the end of the processing for your citizenship application, which nowadays is taking between 1 to 2 years. Okay, so altogether, 8 months to get the card. After the protocol, 1 year for you to start the application. After you start the application, an additional year or a couple of years until you get the citizenship. So we're talking about a timeline that we typically recommend of at least 3 years. And can you show it and can you do that? We don't know. Like, sometimes you can expedite some things, but like, if you have a challenge in meeting those requirements, then you probably would not be a good candidate for this journey, because in addition to those, different requirements, uncertainties, the Brazilian Federal Police and the Brazilian immigration, they change often, like requirements, or they change the processing time. And it's just like it works anywhere else, like in the United States. Like in the United States, 1 month, things are working one way. Next month, everything has changed, right? So I typically, whenever I'm discussing about timelines and journeys with our clients, I prefer to be very conservative. I never say, yes, you're going to be able to do that. Yes, we guarantee. And guess what? There is a bunch of other firms, a bunch of other people out there who's going to say whatever they need to say to take your money, right? Here we do the opposite. Like, we don't want you as a client unless we have a really high chance of getting you through the finish line, because you're hiring us because you need something is meaningful to you. So we don't want to, just take your money knowing that your case is a kind of long shot. All right? I hope that was helpful, Samuel. Marisa Navas, good afternoon, Dr. Luciano. We love your live streams. Que bom vê-la, Marisa. Espero que esteja tudo bem com você, com o Ricardo, estejam pescando muitos peixes aí em Portugal, em Almada ou em Lisboa. All right, so just thanking here Marisa. Marisa, she is in Portugal, in Lisbon, and she's always around here participating in our live streams. We have a Masaki is forming a company and using the 500,000 reais investment in a saving account or buying Brazilian stocks satisfy the requirements to get residency by investment. Masaki, so the business investor visa is going to require an investment into the company, right? So you're never gonna get a visa until your money is within the company, and it doesn't just go into the company's bank account. It needs to be recorded by the Brazilian Central Bank after there is a whole procedure on the paperwork of the company receiving your investment. Okay, so this process is very, it's not complicated, but is very well defined, and 99% of the ideas that people have, like, they're not going to work for this visa. All right, this visa is very square. Like, I mean, you need to do things in a certain way, and for 99% of people it doesn't work, or maybe 95, right? Like, for 5%, yes, it's going to work. And we do have actually several clients for this visa, but again, 95% of people should look elsewhere, because creative ideas are not going to work. Very square. You need to record the money being invested. This money is going to be invested in a company, and then the managers of this company, they are going to decide what you do with your money, okay? So that's pretty much it. Money invested in the stocks, it has no connection whatsoever to any of the investor visas. It got to be money invested and made available to a company in Brazil to, guess what, to develop a very specific and crystal clear business plan that you're going to deliver to the government, and that you're going to track over time to make sure that you are delivering the employment positions that you're promising when you're getting the visa, right? Like, so the visa, whenever we're talking about the business or the company investor visa, the exchange here is that you're creating employment in the country. Okay, it's not that you're bringing money into the country. The concept of bringing money into the country, it is actually true for the real estate investment route, okay, but not for the business investment route. For the business investment route, the exchange here is that you get residency because you're generating employment for Brazilians, not for you and not for other foreign citizens, for Brazilians. So it's very narrow, it's very strict, and for 95% of people, it's going to be a bad idea. All right, Samuel, can a couple live in another state for work reason while they are in the process of citizenship? No, Samuel, they cannot. Okay, like, I mean, one of the things that the immigration is going to be looking for throughout your journey is whether this relationship is legitimate or not. And because, again, like, it's not something specific to your case, not something personal, but it is something caused by the past history of stable union cases in Brazil. If you're not living together, the Brazilian Federal Police is not going to think this is a good faith relationship, and they can check on that at any given stage in the process. So if you're not going to be together, if this is not going to be a relationship that's going to be 100% legit, again, not from my perspective, from the Brazilian Federal Police perspective, it becomes a long shot, right? And guess what? There are people who are going to do it anyway, and sometimes it works, sometimes it does not, right? Nobody can tell for sure. Nobody can, tweak like those procedures that are done sometimes on a random basis by the Brazilian Federal Police on purpose, okay? All right, Matt again are consulates presently slow walking or requiring more information than usual from the U.S. visa applications due to the present tension caused by the U.S. administration? Matt, I think it may be the case. Like, I mean, there is a whole kind of situation between Brazil and the United States, which is horrible for our business, right? Because as you can imagine, if you have a people like coming to Brazil, whenever the two countries are not really talking, right? Like, I mean, this is going to cause concern, like to the foreign citizens, and that's bad to our business. But it is what it is. There is no formal decision by the Brazilian government, like to deny or to be tougher. However, something that is a reality is that, consulates, they're typically just like in the US, right? Like the consulates and the consular officers, they are politically aligned with the president. Okay, so nowadays, like the consuls of the Brazilian consulates, guess what? They are all kind of aligned with President Lula, and this whole situation between President Lula and President Trump is going to cause like these consuls to kind of take naturally the President Lula side and kind of become, I don't know, like, I mean, less friendly, if you will. Okay, so that's an interesting point, Matt. That's for sure. That's unfortunate. Hopefully, this is going to be resolved soon, because guess what? We also suffer when such things happen. All right, we have Aaron. Good to see you, Aaron. Aaron, for the investor visa, is your firm able to handle the management, hiring, and financial compliance if I can deliver the technology? Aaron, unfortunately not. Like, I mean, it is an interesting idea, right? But that would be more like an incubator. And what we do, Aaron, is already complex and time consuming enough. This piece of management, financials, the investor would have to manage themselves, right? An alternative, something that we see happening to some of our clients, Aaron, is when they find a trustworthy business partner, which is kind of I would say you need to be careful when you are selecting a business partner. But many U.S. citizens, when they are following the business investor route, they are going to find a local who is experienced in a specific business sector, and this local is gonna kind of take the lead in terms of managing the business, right? And I don't know, like, I mean, I particularly, even if you find someone who's trustworthy, who's your friend, right? I mean, there is still so much room for trouble down the line, right? Like, I mean, you see, business partnerships going south every single day. So I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And when we provided the service, we provide the services, like to individuals who have a very meaningful business experience, and they know 100% what they are, what they're getting themselves into, right? And yes, I mean there are cases, right? Like we have a client, for instance, like he likes a particular coastal area of São Paulo state, which is surprising, right? Because typically we're going to be talking about the Northeast or Rio de Janeiro or Florianópolis, but he likes, the coastal area of São Paulo. Granted, it's almost Rio de Janeiro, so I don't know, is São Paulo with a Rio de Janeiro flavor, right? And like he started a business in this particular area with a real estate agency based in the area. Like they were over there for, I don't know, 10, 20 years. And so he entered the business as a partner, and he, invested the 500,000, and he had a prior relationship with this real estate agency, right? So, like when we look at the intention, it made sense, right? It wasn't like a crazy idea. It made sense. So for you, Aaron, like a possibility, right? Like it's not a recommendation, right? It's not a recommendation at all. I'm just sharing, possibilities. But if you don't want to take on the management, financial needs of the business, ideally, or a possibility would be to find someone else who would run those things. For the business investor visa, you can either invest into an existing business, just the example I just told you, like a real estate agency, 20 years in the market, or you can also form a new entity from the scratch. So Brazil doesn't discriminate. Brazil is not concerned if you're gonna be investing in an existing business or if you're going to be starting a new one, as long as everything is done very specifically by the books. Like money needs to be recorded at the Brazilian Central Bank after the paperwork for the receiving entity has been approved, right? And then this money can be inserted into this business entity, whether new or existing, and then your ownership is going to be reflected into the shares that this company has standing, right? Like, so you need to have like a participation in that particular business, okay? And then something that nobody tells you is that the immigration, they do track whether you generated the employment positions, right? And unfortunately, this market, right, like the immigration market out there, is so wild that people are gonna sell you right and left the business investor visa. Sometimes even the like the startup, which just requires 150,000 reais instead of the 500. They're gonna take anything. They don't care. They could not care less if your residency is going to be around a year or a couple of years down the line. They could not care less. They just take your money, they handle the application, they give you the initial residency, and then it's your problem, right? Like it couldn't be worse than that. So that's not what we do. Like if we don't think there is a minimum of feasibility for your route, we typically say, listen, we are not the right provider, okay? And then people are gonna go elsewhere. But thank you for asking, Aaron. Like I know, you're always sharing ideas over here. Thank you for sharing this question. Masaki, thank you so much. Your info is so helpful. Thank you, Masaki. Thank you for being with us. All right. Thank you for participating. Does your office help the digital nomad visa? Yes, Masaki. Like we are probably the law firm with the highest number of digital nomad visas and residencies in Brazil. Like I mean, I cannot tell for sure. There is no ranking, but we also have access to the Diário Oficial da União or the Brazilian Official Gazette, and we can see the number of residencies being granted, and we know how many of them are ours. And yes, that's something we do pretty much every day. Okay, Masaki, if you wanna know more, feel free to send us an email. We can, share with you like the costs, some overall ideas about the journey, and then if you have, qualification questions, then ideally you would schedule a consultation with our team. Nowadays we have like an entry-level consultation, which is 75 US dollars. You talk to an attorney specializing in immigration, okay? And that's the entry level. And we have other types of consultations. And the fee that you pay for the consultation is used as a credit to your actual service payment, right? So the idea here, is that we like to follow the law, okay? And in Brazil, attorneys cannot provide the consultations free of charge. And, again, amusing to me, some people will say, well, but I spoke with this firm. They don't have any problem in terms of, providing a free consultation. We don't even reply because we're not going to teach you how to do things correctly. If you don't know at this stage, I'm sure it's not going to be us who are going to change your mindset. But that's a reality in Brazil. Attorneys cannot give advisory for free. Of course, like here we are in a kind of live stream, and we're not giving like specific advisory. We're just discussing things in general. But in a specific consultation in which you are sharing like all your details, and we are reviewing and we are telling you, do this and do that. This is like a consultation. And in Brazil, a consultation cannot. It is forbidden for an attorney or a law firm to advise without payment, right? So our solution is like, yes, you're gonna pay us, a tiny amount, but anyhow, this amount is gonna be applied as a credit to the service itself. So that's our way to try, to remain competitive, because unfortunately, there are attorneys and law firms out there who don't care about doing the things the way they should be done. All right, what else? Samir, what if marriage then stable union? Same process. Samir, maybe you meant marriage then a citizenship, right? Because if there is marriage, then there is no reason for a stable union, right? It's going to be either marriage or stable union. Like you can have a marriage and then have a stable union, right? So I would assume you're saying marriage and then have the citizenship, right? It's more or less the same journey. Now for marriage, naturally, the Brazilian Federal Police is going to be less concerned with fraud, because then marriage is like the full thing, right? It's not just like this thing in the middle. You're saying, listen, we are married, and like there is a less scrutiny, but still, the Polícia Federal could visit you at different stages of this journey, like during the residency application, during the citizenship application, and so on. The question about living in separate states is going to depend on how much credible evidence you have in terms of being a good faith marriage, right? Like, I mean, they're going to look at other stuff because, again, like if they visit you and the other partner lives elsewhere, uh, marriage, like you're going to be in a better spot. But I think, from a kind of common sense perspective, right? Like the officers from the Brazilian Federal Police, they're still going to be, you know, asking themselves, is this thing legit or not, right? And then if they are going to conclude that this is legit, it's going to depend on the available evidence at that point in time. Aaron, I will send you a succinct email if you know of an incubator or other entity that I should follow up with it and vet. I will follow up and figure out if it is viable. All right, Aaron. Yeah, feel free to send it over. To be honest with you, we don't know about any incubators that we would recommend. Our concern, Aaron, is like when we recommend, we are basically vouching for something that we don't have control. So the referrals we have, and maybe you know about that, these are going to be like referrals who we may have been sharing for a long while. Most of them are providers that we know for several years, and they haven't caused any harm to our clients so far. So that's why we are sharing them. Like for us to potentially, recommend, or not to recommend, but even share as a reference an incubator, I think we would need much more than just knowing them. Just because, again, like our concern is that we give you a name and then maybe work with this name and things don't work out, and we don't want to be in this position, okay, in which we would have provide a bad referral. So typically the referrals we have, like I said, are going to be referrals that we've been using for several years and are reliable as much as possible in, let's say, today's standards, if you will. TechSphere, what is the process of birth citizenship for foreign couple? Do the parents get citizenship? And how long does it take? TechSphere, so yes, birth citizenship in Brazil is a pathway for residency, and then your residency in turn is going to be your segue to the citizenship. Okay, so something that we hear very often is like, well, my spouse is Brazilian, do I get a passport, right? Like, well, if I have a child in Brazil, do I get a passport? So the citizenship / passport is never gonna come from just the fact that you married to a Brazilian or that you had a child in Brazil. It's gonna come from two things. First, because you've been in Brazil for a meaningful period of time. That's either number one. Either number two, because you have a need to remain in Brazil because of your relationship with this Brazilian, right? In this case, your child. And third, because you have at least a functional level control of the Portuguese language, to be able to, perform everyday tasks in Brazil. Okay, so for the child, some circumstances in which we see that wouldn't work is like, the person has a Brazilian child, but guess what? Does not live with the Brazilian child. If you don't live with the Brazilian child, guess what? You're not gonna be entitled to the residency, and you're gonna be entitled to the citizenship as well. Now, considering that, yes, you have this child in Brazil with your partner, you're going to be living as a family with this child. In just a single year, typically, in just a single year of stay in Brazil, stay full-time in Brazil, right? Like, we're not talking about getting an address or, setting up a P.O. box. We're talking about living a full year in Brazil. After a full year in Brazil, as a resident based on the childbirth, and the fact that you can communicate in reasonable Portuguese, then yes, you can apply for the Brazilian citizenship. We have a bunch of cases here at the firm. They are all taking between 1 year to 2 years for completion. So timeline is going to really depend on your situation, but the cases we see, the child is born, it takes 3 to 4 months for the parent to secure the residency, and then after they secure the residency, they need a full year of a residency in Brazil, and after this full year they can apply for the Brazilian citizenship as long as their Portuguese is good enough. For the Portuguese, there are two main ways. One way for you to prove is to take the CELP test. I'm going to write down here in the chat window, CELP test, okay, the CELP test. Another way is for you to have a qualifying program of at least 1 year that you go in person, and that you also take like serious examinations that is provided by a Brazilian university. And once you get like your diploma, you are approved in this program. You have the diploma. Again, it's a trustworthy program. You can also use that as a replacement for the self-test, as long as you are able to communicate during your interview with the Brazilian Federal Police. Actually, even if you do the self-test, you're still gonna need to be able to communicate with the Brazilian Federal Police. I had a consultation another day, very surprising to me, and kind of unfortunate. I don't know, like maybe attorneys have a bad reputation because people, sometimes they come to us and they tell us like the craziest stories you can think of. And this gentleman in a consultation, he told me, like his wife, who's a Brazilian, took the test on his place. Like this was the most common thing in the world, right? I don't know. And guess what? Like, so he had like the self-test, which was taken in a fraudulent manner by his wife. And then when he attended the interview at the Brazilian Federal Police and couldn't communicate with the Brazilian Federal Police at all, guess what? The Brazilian Federal Police said, listen, you're not going to get it. We can clearly tell that you shouldn't get the citizenship. And to my surprise, they have not started a criminal investigation because, again, I think it was pretty obvious to the Brazilian officer that there was a fraud, right? A guy who had a good result on CELP should be able to communicate, reasonably, and he could not. So it was basically a waste. And to make things even worse, like he said, he was advised by an attorney, right? Very, very unfortunate, right? Like attorneys advising on criminal fraudulent activity. I couldn't be more sad with this whole story, but like at the end of the this whole journey, he lost like a boatload of money because he had paid the attorney, he paid all the fees for the citizenship application, he paid for the CELP, like he lost a boatload of money and got nothing at the end, right? And maybe he was lucky because instead of nothing, he could have like a criminal procedure for fraud against the Brazilian immigration system, right? And he didn't get, at least based on what we spoke, but just sharing, like stories from the trench, okay? Stories from the trench, things that we hear over here on a daily basis. Samil, which consultation should I choose on your website directly speaking with you? Samil, so I take like the consultations, nowadays I take most of the consultations that you're gonna see like Brazil general legal advisory, right? And it's a broader type of consultation that we can discuss not only immigration but other stuff as well. some level of tax stuff, like which should be concerning to everyone, I think. So if you pick that one, I take like 9 times out of 10 that one. And when you're booking, like you have an opportunity, Samuel, but it's not the entry level. The entry level is done by another attorney here at the firm. The one I do is like the general legal consultation, and I also do like the investor visas, right? The real estate and investor visas ones. These are the two ones I do. And if you pick one of those two, like when you entering like information about your needs, about your journey, you can also say, listen, and by the way, I would like to have this consultation with Luciano, and then they are gonna, make sure that I'm available for the consultation. If I'm not, they typically tell you, and then they offer to refund you the money, right? We are very fast to refund money for consultations whenever we don't think we are a good match. We refund the consultations on a daily basis. Every single day, we refund the consultations that we don't think we are the right match. One that is very painful to me personally is like when I see people coming from distressed countries like Nigeria, Sudan, like Haiti, and they need a way out. They reach out to us, but there is so little we can do that I don't think we should ever take their money, okay? And whenever we have like these types of consultations booked, we're gonna be very honest. We're gonna just reply, listen, here is your refund. Unfortunately, we cannot help you get this visa that you need to enter Brazil in the first place. Now, if you are a Nigerian citizen, if you are an Indian citizen, if you are a Pakistani citizen, if you are an Egyptian citizen, and you have the visa already, meaning that you can enter Brazil, we absolutely will help you with your journey, okay? Because then it means that you can enter Brazil. Once you enter Brazil, we can get you all of those things with no exception. We can get you digital nomad, we can get retirement, we can get you real estate investor, we can get you company, we can get you anything as long as you can enter Brazil, okay? But if you are in those countries and you don't have yet a visa, the chances that we're gonna be able to help you, they are so tiny that, again, it makes me very sad that we cannot help you, but I don't want to take your money. So, for all of those people who come to us and they just book a consultation, we explain to them that we cannot do much, and because of that, we would prefer to basically refund the fee, and in addition to refunding the fee, many times you say, and by the way, we have the live stream on Wednesdays. You can just basically go to the live stream, and many times here, like if you've been here with us for a while, you're gonna see my interaction with citizens of those countries, and basically telling them how to increase the chances of getting a visa approved at the Brazilian embassy or consulate in their countries, which again, unfortunately, is very, very slim. Okay, but I was just highlighting some. I'm not saying it's your case. I'm just saying that if by some occurrence, for instance, right, like next month, September, we're going to be participating in the IPS. IPS is a real estate event in Dubai, and then I'm going to be there like for a week, right? Like, so if you try to book during those dates, they're going to say, well, guess what? He's not going to be able to take your consultation, and then they're going to say you could, potentially schedule for a couple of weeks down the line, or if you're not, available to wait, then we're just going to refund your money. Okay, Samuel, but thank you so much for asking. If you schedule the consultation, if I'm available, it's going to be a pleasure to meet you in person, if you will. All right, TechSphere. Does Brazil has a CBI program or any fastest way to get citizenship? What would be a CBI, TechSphere? Help me with the acronyms, just to make sure I understand what you're saying, and then I'm gonna let you know. But that's an interesting question. In the meantime, While you answer what CBI is, I'm gonna tell you that Brazil is very particular in terms of limiting the routes to citizenship. Okay, and we also work with Portugal, even though it's secondary. It is secondary to Brazil for us. And in Portugal, it's so interesting. Like anything long term is gonna land you first permanent residency and second citizenship. Anything, all right. So if you are in Portugal as a student, guess what? 5 years down the line, permanent residency. 8 to 10 years, like this is being litigated as we speak by the Portuguese Supreme Court. 8 to 10 years down the line, guess what? You are a citizen, not Brazil. Brazil has very specific routes to permanent residency, which, by the way, we don't call it permanent anymore since 2017. We call residency for an undetermined period of time. And that's just a funny way of saying permanent because the Brazilian government wants to be able to take your residency away if you no longer qualify. What do I mean by that? Let's say you apply for the company investor visa, and you say you're going to create jobs, you say you have this business plan, they give you the card. Guess what? For prazo indeterminado, for an undetermined period of time. That's the new way of saying the permanent residency. But if 2 years down the line, they're going to check the employment taxes, and they say, listen, this guy, he hasn't created any positions. Guess what? They can go and take away your residency. Okay, so that was the whole mindset of changing the name from permanent residency to residency for prazo indeterminado. That happened back in 2017. Very interesting. If you look at the Brazilian Revenue Service website, they still call it permanent residency, right? And that's natural, right? Like we have separate ministries, separate departments, and sometimes they don't update the language. All right, but yes. Aaron is saying citizenship by investment, real estate and business. Yeah, Aaron, thank you for chiming in. Yeah, so the citizenship never happens by the investment, right? So in Brazil, there is this distinction. If you invest, you get residency, and through the residency, you're gonna get the citizenship, right? So it doesn't work like there is, like several countries in which you go and you invest some type of money, and guess what? They give you the passport. So you don't get residency, you get the passport instead. Brazil does not have anything like this. And based on the Brazilian framework, I think this will not be compatible, right? Like even if we have a future president who says, you know what, like we want to modernize the immigration framework, I don't think our legal framework would allow something like this, because Brazil sees the citizenship as something extremely meaningful from a relationship with the country. And from my perspective, it does not matter how much money you would pay. I don't think Brazil would agree that this money would be enough for someone to secure the citizenship. But this said, there are the real estate investment route, and there is the company investment route. You're gonna get the residency, and then through the residency, that's how you could qualify for the citizenship. Yes, TechSphere, thank you for clarifying. Is exactly what Aaron said. Yeah, no, I don't think TechSphere, to be honest with you, I don't think Brazil would ever offer something like this. There is something in our mindset, right? Like there is something in my head, even as a no attorney person. I think and the word may be strong, but it sounds repugnant to us. It sounds like something bad, okay? And I'm not saying it's bad. Like I am an immigration guy, right? Like for me, that would be amazing. Like that would mean a lot of new clients. But from my perspective as a Brazilian citizen, it sounds like something that's not desirable to Brazil. Because again, Brazil is going to give the citizenship to someone because this person has a link that is strong enough to the country to justify the citizenship, and this would never be about money, right? It's a very probably Latin culture trait, right? And interesting that Argentina, which is another Latin culture, would agree, but they are, taking very bold steps. I heard that Peter Thiel or Peter Thiel, I don't know how to pronounce exactly his name, but it is like the U.S. billionaire from the IT sector. There was a story, I think was published on Wall Street Journal, that he bought a house and was relocating to Argentina. And then I spoke with an attorney friend of mine in New York who happens to work with the attorney of this guy. And he said it was a lie. He said, it was just news out there. Peter Thiel is not moving to Argentina, right? But just the, the fake news that he was moving to Argentina, I think is very meaningful in terms of what Argentina is doing nowadays. Expanding on that text here, like Paraguay, Paraguay is also doing an amazing job. Is doing an amazing job in terms of immigration and taxation. Okay, so Paraguay, believe it or not, there is a large flow of Brazilians who are moving from Brazil to Paraguay because of taxes, right? Like Paraguay, they have a very Instagrammable approach to taxes. They say, listen, nothing here is gonna exceed the 10%. I don't care what we're talking about, never more than 10%. So if they're talking about whatever taxes are applied to a product, it cannot exceed the 10%. If they're gonna charge you, income tax, it cannot exceed the 10%. And guess what? It is genius because it's so easy for people to understand. And they are going to look at Brazil with a 27.5% tax bracket, and then they are going to compare to Paraguay, and they'll say, you know what? Like if money is my thing, Paraguay is the destination right now. Not surprisingly, there is still like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people who would never consider Paraguay or Argentina as a replacement because Brazil is unique, and like I say, that's something, again, thinking as a non-attorney, like Brazil does not need necessarily to sell itself. Brazil is a very unique country, and there are people who are going to be very happy to pay the 27.5% tax bracket. Many people coming from Europe, right? Like if you're from Portugal, you're going to be paying 45%. If you are from the Netherlands, you're paying 50%. If you're from the UK, you may be paying 40 and something. So Brazil, not that bad with 27.5%. But this said, I do recognize that Argentina and Paraguay, they are doing a great job in terms of making their countries more attractive to immigrants. And this is not going to change because, again, this is not going to change Brazil's posture, I think, because it's something very ingrained in our mindset, right? I don't think Brazil is going to get much better, if you will, but really nice sharing. All right, before I forget, if you're here with us, remember to click that like button. It helps our business and it helps other people just like you to find our content. It is appreciated. And I'm also gonna share here about our partner for real estate, Remax Nomad States in Rio de Janeiro. They are based in Rio de Janeiro, but they operate through FAO Brazil. They've been assisting so many clients of us with finding the ideal property. So there you go. If you want to take a screenshot, you can get in touch with them. You don't need to be our client to work with Remax Nomad States. Naturally, they are happy to work with everyone. And there you go. This is Remax Nomad States. All right. Tex here has one more question. If someone has Brazil passport, are they eligible to get Portuguese passport or Spanish? So you are not gonna be able to get the either Portuguese or card that is like the citizens card that you use in Portugal. You have a reduced timeline for some immigration benefits in Portugal, but Tex here for sure it does not get you a Portuguese passport. All right, so both Portuguese and Brazil, and guess what? Brazil was colonized by Portugal, so not surprisingly, we have some kind of common traits when it comes to immigration, and Portugal, just like Brazil, will never engage in one of those CBI, right? Like using the term that you used, will never engage in any type of CBI or even a country, like a sister company, if you will, a sister country, if you will, basis for you to secure the passport. So no, if you have a Brazilian passport, yes, you're gonna have many benefits in your immigration journey in Portugal, but you would never get a passport just for being a Brazilian. All right. All right, let's take a look at what else we have over here. Let's take, actually, is gonna be our final participation in the day. And remember, we are gonna be here together again next week, the same time, right? And if you don't wanna forget about our live stream, you can come to our channel, YouTube channel, and you can find the streaming that is already scheduled for the August 19th date, and you can click on notify me, right? If you do that, as soon as the live stream starts, you're gonna get a major notice that the live stream is starting, and then you're not gonna miss our live stream, all right? So it's gonna be August the 19th, 7 days from now. It's gonna be the usual time as 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time, okay? And let's take a look at what we have. We have a king. If I'm naturalized as a Portuguese, do I also qualify for the CPLP track to obtain residency and faster citizenship time? King, residency, yes. I can tell you, very safely that you get the CPLP, okay? Now the citizenship, you could, try to sue the Brazilian Federal Administration, but my recommendation is that you actually learn the Brazilian the Portuguese language. Maybe you do know the Portuguese language. I cannot tell, but it is not a problem for you to be naturalized as long as you have a decent spoken, written, and reading Portuguese. All right, and if that's a plan that you have, you may want to schedule a consultation to discuss and review this plan with us. All right, I want to say thank you to everyone for the participation today. Very interesting questions, and I hope to see you next Wednesday, and wishing you all a blessed rest of your day.